little bit different because 2 weeks ago there had been the assassination attempt on President Trump. And as a result of that, I dedicated a good part of that session to President Trump's record with the Jews, whether it was, and so we saw clips of when he recognized Yerushalayim as the capital, moved the embassy, Golan Heights, the Abraham Accords, and then we had other things too. And in the same way, I was thinking about how to do today. And here's what I'm going to do. It's different from the way I've done it any other time. And therefore, I'm going to let you know in advance so you can schedule yourself either to drop out if you already saw it and don't want to see it again. There'll be more than that. Or you can even drop out for 57 minutes and come back. Here's what we're going to do. The main focus will be very unusual. I will be doing the entire Netanyahu speech. Now, here's why I'm doing it. I saw it, but it was in California, it was 11 a.m. and Denise was out on her errands. So I saw it myself. Have you ever gone to a movie by yourself or a play by yourself? I mean, if it's a good play. If it's a bad play, you try to get at it intermission. But if it's good play, it almost is like a shame. Gee, I wish I was there with Denise or with Ellen so we could talk about it on the way back home. This is the kind of speech, I've seen all 4 of his speeches. He has spoken at Congress more than any other world leader, including Winston Churchill. Churchill had the record of 3. This was Netanyahu's 4th. For my 2 cents, far and away, all 3 of his prior speeches were excellent. Many of you may remember his speech against the Iranian Accords. But for my 2 cents, this speech far and away is the best speech he ever gave in his life. I've seen his speeches in the United States, and if it was just an average speech, but there's more. I wanted for those of you that read about it, but did not hear it and see it, I wanted you to see this. The way the media have reported that speech, they emphasized there were thousands of people outside protesting against Israel, and they were burning flags. And in the Congress, it was half empty because the Republicans were there, but the Democrats weren't there. Or there were Democrats there, but it was such a big boycott that you just felt it. I saw that. I mean, I saw that speech. I heard that speech. I even looked at it again after I read all the news reports. We know the media lies. We know that the term fake news did not come out of nowhere. But this is such a lie, and I'll leave it to your own eyes. Not only was every Republican there on his feet and her feet cheering with a record, whoever keeps these numbers, I don't know, but there was they reported it was a record 58 standing ovations that never had happened, not even for Reagan, not even for a State of the Union for Biden or Obama. But if you watch carefully, the way it is, the Republicans are on one side. On the screen, they'll be on your left side, which is actually the right side in the House. But on your left side will be the Republic. On the right side will be the Democrats. And you will see that there are sometimes the Democrats do not stand up. But by and large, the Democrats, they're not just clapping, they stand up and they clap. A few people were missing. From what I understand, 50 Democrats were not there. They tell you that 50 weren't there. Happens to be there are 215 Democrats in the House, and there are 50 in the Senate. So out of 265 Democrats, 50 weren't there, which means that 80% of the Congress was there. So, they talk about that glass of water, that famous glass of water, is it half empty or half full? 80% of the Congress was there standing and cheering over and over again, even the Democrats. Finally, after the speech, I've got a number of things for about 20 minutes, some other events, and also some post-speech analysis by some people. One of the things to keep your eye open for, I'll comment at the time when it comes. And then we have some other things. So let's get rolling. Because the theme today will be Netanyahu's speech. And also what I wanted you to see is what it was like when he first entered the chambers, because they don't tell you that. And even if they would tell you, you have to see it. because obviously I love Israel. Obviously, I'm not just an average Zionist, but I'm extreme Zionist. And I was concerned the way the buildup was, and there were all these protests outside. I was concerned that he's going to receive a muted reception when he comes in. Don't clap. Because you have to clap. He's a visiting dignitary. And in America, you do that. In civilized countries, you do. And that's what I expected. I did not expect the reception he got. So let's go beyond. Again, this is going to go on for about 57 minutes, and then we'll have the rest of the program. It'll probably run longer than usual. We're probably going to run all in all till 12:45, not 12:30. So I apologize, and anyone who needs to leave earlier, you're not offending anyone. But it will be more exciting for me to see it with other people. It's going to be like going to the play with 25 people. It's going to make it a better play for me. I hope it will for you too. Here we go. And you'll also, I'm telling you, this stuff, I'll save it for later as it comes up. We optimize the screen. You'll see a few black bars sometimes, and it is what it is. A few black boxes. We take this off the screen, and because we're doing our focus on Netanyahu's speech today, we're going to start with Hatikva. And because it is the 3 weeks, I tried to find a Hatikva and a prayer for the state of Israel at the end that are a cappella without without instrumentation. This version brings tears to my eyes. The idea that you could have a Moscow male Jewish choir publicly singing Hatikva 40, 50 years ago when I was in college. I was getting arrested at demonstrations for Soviet Jewry. They couldn't even have a prayer book in public. They only once a year on Simchat Torah gathered publicly. And now you could actually have a Moscow male Jewish orchestra or choir singing Hatikva. It really brings tears to my eyes. So that people clap.
We're going to show you a live look at the Capitol. This is where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be addressing Congress tomorrow. About 2 hours ago, protesters filled the Cannon House office building rotunda just near the Capitol, protesting Netanyahu's visit. Capitol Police took them out in handcuffs.
More protests are expected tomorrow on the Capitol grounds. We are helping you prepare with team coverage tonight. Our Rafael Sanchez Cruz is outside the Capitol with a look at security measures.
I want to emphasize, when you see things like Jewish Voices for Peace, at least half of them are not Jewish. And you'll actually see certain people of different ethnicities. There's no way they're Jewish. And keep in mind, the ones who say they're Jewish, the vast majority, if not all of them, are the children of non-Jewish mothers or mothers that converted to Judaism, not according to halakha. So they aren't Jewish. And you get an insight into why the halakha required a kosher conversion, kosher Jewish mothers. Because even if the kid does not come out wonderfully, no kid born to a Jewish home, very few are going to come out in this kind of garbage.
there, and Matt Gregory talked with Jewish faith leaders about the significance of the prime minister's visit.
All right, Rafa, let's start with you. You know, we know there's already a lot of fencing in place. We can see it over your shoulder. Good evening.
Yeah, that's right. We're actually on Constitution Avenue and First Street, and you can really see from this angle the layers of fencing here on the Capitol grounds. Now, U.S. Capitol Police tells us that later tonight they're going to tell us how many people were arrested in that sit-in. Now, in any moment now, the families of some of the Israeli hostages are set to hold a vigil here on Capitol Hill as they continue pressuring the Israeli Prime Minister to reach a deal with Hamas so that their loved ones can come home.
Can you imagine what Netanyahu must go through? And I'm not 100% the biggest Netanyahu fan, but I like him. And can you imagine what it must be to be the Prime Minister of Israel? You're coming to the United States, making an appeal to this country and its government leaders to support Israel and to send weapons and to not condemn Israel and be there for Israel in the UN. And you've got a whole bunch of your own Israeli citizens flying to the United States to demonstrate against you. This is like when they come from Italy, you don't have Italians coming and demonstrating against and so on and so forth. Only with Jews. It's what I call the Korach problem. So we continue.
Good idea just to steer clear for the next 18 hours or so. Rafa, thanks.
To the best of my knowledge, however, tomorrow will be unique in
talking about Jews.
Bringing Prime Minister Netanyahu to address a joint meeting of Congress. It will be the first time in American history that a war criminal has been given that honor. Frankly, this invitation to Netanyahu is a disgrace and something that we will look back on with regret. Madam President, I think we all agree that Israel had the right to defend itself against the horrific Hamas attack on October 7th. But Netanyahu's extreme right-wing government has, since that attack, waged what amounts to a total war against the entire Palestinian people, making life unlivable in Gaza and killing tens of thousands. These actions have trampled on international law, on American law, and on basic human values. It is absolutely irresponsible for...
Remember that Bernie Sanders, for years, 4 or 5 years, has been campaigning for Ilhan Omar and for Rashida Tlaib in their congressional elections and shows up at their rallies. Remember also that he has a communist background and that this is not extraordinary. Trotsky was a communist and a Jew. 5 of the original Politburo of the Soviet communists, along with Stalin, were Jews. Eventually, they all got killed. If he would be in another situation, he would find that would happen. He's lucky that he's the only communist in the Senate, and the others are just extreme leftists at most, like Elizabeth Warren and Chris Van Hollen. But the terminology he uses, describing and standing out uniquely, it's a problem we Jews have always had. We recognize it, we understand it, and we live with it because he has a right to speak, and we have to live with it.
For us to turn our backs on one of the worst humanitarian disasters in modern history.
We'll go on from here. He's not talking about Sudan and what's going on in Darfur. We covered that 2 weeks ago. That he's not talking about. All right. Here we go. These are, by contrast from our Jewish communists in the Senate, these are Christian evangelicals who met with Netanyahu before his speech. John Hagee, Pastor John Hagee, Christians United for Israel. That's Christian pastor.
Sunday. Well, welcome all.
By the way, these are not pastors of Stiebels, so to speak. These are pastors of major megaplex churches that get like 10,000 people on Sunday mornings. That's, by the way, Ron Dermer, who was the ambassador in Washington, now is a close advisor to Netanyahu. That's his wife. That's Netanyahu's wife, Sarah Netanyahu. That's I'm going blank a moment. The son of Gula Cohen. Okay, he's Netanyahu's guy in security, and we'll continue.
All of you. It's good to see you again. We've met, I think, with just about everyone over the years, and I want to thank you for your incredible support at all times, and especially in these trying times. We have no better friends than you, and I don't say that lightly or haphazardly. It comes from the heart. It also comes from knowing how deeply you're committed to Israel and how strong you stand up for Israel and stand up for the truth, stand up for our common heritage and our common values. So I want to thank you on behalf of my wife, Sarah, and myself, on behalf of the people of Israel, on behalf of the state of Israel. Thank you. We learned from the national...
Okay.
Please stand by. We're going to listen to the House floor as the Israeli Prime Minister makes his way. Let's listen.
Remember, this side is the Democrats. And you hear that the Democrats are boycotting. And he's not just getting a clap hand. And this side of the Democrats, and that side of the Republicans. They're all standing and clapping for 4 minutes. The lobby up top is completely packed. Both sides of the aisle. Did they tell you that in newspaper reports? They would have gone on for an hour if Johnson did not pick up the gavel.
Members of Congress, I now have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.
Both sides of the aisle.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Senator Ben Cardin, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senators.
But you see, even Fox News addresses Congress as Dems Boyd. They always find something negative. That glass of water over there is full. It's not half empty. Those glasses are 80% full, just like the House of Congress.
Members of Congress, distinguished guests. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the profound honor of addressing this great citadel of democracy for the fourth time. We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life. For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together.
Notice that they're standing again on the Democrat side also. And they're clapping on the Democrat side. Elon Musk over there, I believe.
Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose. And my friends, I came to assure you today of one thing: we will win. Ladies and gentlemen, like December 7th, 1941, and September 11th, 2001, October 7th is a day that will forever live in infamy. It was the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. It began as a perfect day, not a cloud in the sky. Thousands of young Israelis were celebrating at an outdoor music festival. And suddenly, at 6:29 a.m., as children were still sleeping soundly in their beds in the towns and kibbutzim next to Gaza, suddenly heaven turned into hell. 3,000 Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel. They butchered 1,200 people from 41 countries, including 39 Americans. Proportionately, compared to our population size, that's like 20 9/11s in one day. And these monsters, they raped women, they beheaded men, they burnt babies alive, they killed parents in front of their children, and children in front of their parents. They dragged 255 people, both living and dead, into the dark dungeons of Gaza. Israel has already brought home 135 of these hostages, including 7 who were freed in daring rescue operations. One of those freed hostages, Noor Gamani, is here in the gallery, sitting near my wife, Sarah. On the morning of October 7th, the entire world saw Noah's look of desperation as she was violently abducted to Gaza on the back of a motorcycle. I met Noah's mother, Leora, a few months ago. She was dying of cancer. She said to me, "Prime Minister, I have one final wish. I wish to hug my daughter Noah one last time before I die." 2 months ago, I authorized a breathtaking commando rescue operation. Our special forces, including a heroic officer named Arnonz Mora, who fell in this battle, rescued Noah and 3 other hostages. Noah, I think it's one of the most moving things. When Noah was reunited with her mother, Leora, and her mother's last wish came true. Noah, we're so thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you. Many hostage families are also here with us today, including Eliyahu Bibas. Eliyahu Bibas is the grandfather of those 2 beautiful red-headed boys, the Bibas boys, toddlers. And they were taken hostage with their mother and and Eliyahu's son. The entire family was taken hostage. 2 beautiful red-haired children taken hostage. What monsters. And with us also is Iris Chaim, whose son Yotam bravely escaped Hamas captivity with 2 other Israelis, and tragically they were killed making their way back to our lines. We have with us also the families of American hostages. They're here. The pain these families have endured is beyond words. I met with them again yesterday, and I promised them this: I will not rest until all their loved ones are home, all of them. As we speak, we're actively engaged in intensive efforts to secure their release, and I'm confident that these efforts can succeed. Some of them are taking place right now. I want to thank President Biden for his tireless efforts on behalf of the hostages and for his efforts to the hostage families as well. I thank President Biden for his heartfelt support for Israel after the savage attack on October 7th. He rightly called Hamas sheer evil He dispatched 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East to deter a wider war. And he came to Israel to stand with us during our darkest hour, a visit that will never be forgotten. President Biden and I have known each other for over 40 years. I want to thank him for half a century of friendship to Israel and for being, as he says, a proud Zionist. Actually, he says a proud Irish-American Zionist. My friends, for more than 9 months, Israel's soldiers have shown boundless courage. With us today, is Lieutenant Avichai Reuven. Avichai is an officer in the Israeli paratroopers. His family immigrated to Israel from Ethiopia. In the early hours of October 7th, Avichai heard the news of Hamas's bloody rampage. He put on his uniform, grabbed his rifle, but he didn't have a car. So he ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people. You heard that right. He ran 8 miles, came to the front lines, killed many terrorists, and saved many, many lives. Avichai, we all honor your remarkable heroism. Another Israeli is with us here today, and he's stand up right next to Avichai. This is Master Sergeant Ashraf al-Bakhiri. Ashraf is a Bedouin soldier from the Israeli Muslim community of Raat. On October 7th, Ashraf too killed many terrorists. First, he defended his comrades in the military base, and he then rushed to defend the neighboring communities, including the devastated community of Kibbutz Be'eri. Like Ashraf, the Muslim soldiers of the IDF fought alongside their Jewish, Druze, Christian, and other comrades in arms with tremendous bravery. A third hero, Lieutenant Asa Sofer, is also here with us. Asa fought as an officer in the Tank Corps, and he was wounded in battle. He was wounded in battle while protecting his fellow soldiers from a grenade. He lost his right arm and the vision in his left eye. He's recovering, and incredibly, within a short time, Asa will soon return to active duty as a commander of a tank company. I just learned there is a fourth hero here, Lieutenant Jonathan Ben Chamo, who lost a leg in Gaza and continued to fight. My friends, these are the soldiers of Israel, unbowed, undaunted, unafraid. As the Bible says, Am kelavi yakum. They shall rise like lions. They have risen like lions. The lions of Judah, the lions of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the men and women of the IDF come from every corner of Israeli society. Every ethnicity, every color, every creed, left and right, religious and secular. All are imbued with the indomitable spirit of the Maccabees, the legendary Jewish warriors of antiquity. With us today is Yechiel Leiter, the father of one of those Maccabees. Yechiel's father escaped the Holocaust and found refuge in America. As a young man, Yechiel moved to Israel and raised a family of 8 children. He named his eldest son, Moshe, after his late father. Moshe became an exemplary officer in one of our elite commando units. He served with distinction for 2 decades while raising 6 beautiful children of his own. On October 7th, Moshe volunteered to return to combat. 4 weeks later, he was killed when a booby-trapped mine exploded in a tunnel shaft right next to a mosque. At his son's funeral, Yechiel said this: "If the state of Israel had not been established after the Holocaust, the image engraved in our collective memory would have been the photograph of that helpless Jewish boy in the Warsaw Ghetto holding his hands up in the air with Nazi rifles pointed at him. But because of the birth of Israel," Yechiel continued, "because of the courage of soldiers like my son Moshe, the Jewish people are no longer helpless in the face of our enemies." Yechiel, please rise so we can honor your son's sacrifice. And I pledge to you and to all the bereaved families of Israel, some of whom are in this hall today, the sacrifice of your loved ones will not be in vain. It will not be in vain, because for Israel, never again must never be an empty promise. It must always remain a sacred vow. And after October 7th, never again is now. My friends, defeating our brutal enemies requires both courage and clarity. Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. Yet incredibly, many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They stand with people who came into the kibbutzim, into a home. The parents hid the children, the 2 babies, in the attic, in a secret attic. They murdered the families, the parents. They found the secret latch to the hidden attic, and then they murder the babies. These protesters stand with them. They should be ashamed of themselves. They refuse to make the simple distinction between those who target terrorists and those who target civilians, between the democratic state of Israel and the terrorist thugs of Hamas. We recently learned from the National Security Director, U.S. Director of National Intelligence, that Iran is funding and promoting anti-Israel protests in America. They want to disrupt America. So these protesters burn American flags even on the 4th of July. And I wish to salute the fraternity brothers at the University of North Carolina who protected the American flag against these anti-Israel protesters. For all we know, Iran is funding the anti-Israel protests that are going on right now outside this building. Not that many, but they're there, and throughout the city. Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots. Some of these protesters, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza. They might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC. These protesters chant from the river to the sea, but many don't have a clue what river and what sea they're talking about. They not only get an F in geography, they get an F in history. They call Israel a colonialist state. Don't they know that the land of Israel is where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob prayed, where Isaiah and Jeremiah preached, and where David and Solomon ruled? For nearly 4,000 years, the land of Israel has been the homeland of the Jewish people. It's always been our home. It will always be our home. It's not only the campus protesters who get it wrong. It's also the people who run those campuses. 80 years after the Holocaust, the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and I'm ashamed to say my alma mater, MIT, couldn't bring themselves to condemn the calls for the genocide of Jews. You remember what they said? They said, it depends on the context. Well, let me give these befuddled academics a little context. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. For centuries, the massacre of Jews was always preceded by wild accusations. We were accused of everything from poisoning wells, to spreading plagues, to using the blood of slaughtered children to bake Passover matzahs. These preposterous anti-Semitic lies led to persecution, mass murder, and ultimately to history's worst genocide, the Holocaust. Now, just as malicious lies were leveled for centuries at the Jewish people, malicious lies are now being leveled at the Jewish state. No, don't applaud. Listen. The outrageous slanders that paint Israel as racist and genocidal are meant to delegitimize Israel, to demonize the Jewish state, and to demonize Jews everywhere. And no wonder we've witnessed an appalling rise of anti-Semitism in America and around the world. My friends, whenever and wherever we see the scourge of anti-Semitism, we must unequivocally condemn it and resolutely fight it, without exception. And don't be fooled when the blood libels against the Jewish state come from people who wear fancy silk robes and speak in lofty tones about law and justice. Here's a case in point. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has shamefully accused Israel of deliberately starving the people of Gaza. This is utter, complete nonsense. It's a complete fabrication. Israel has enabled more than 40,000 aid trucks to enter Gaza. That's 500,000 tons of food, and that's more than 3,000 calories for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. If there are Palestinians in Gaza who aren't getting enough food, it's not because Israel is blocking it, it's because Hamas is stealing it. So much for that lie, but here's another. The ICC prosecutor accuses Israel of deliberately targeting civilians. What in God's green earth is he talking about? The IDF has dropped millions of flyers, sent millions of text messages, made hundreds of thousands of phone calls to get Palestinian civilians out of harm's way. But at the same time, Hamas does everything in its power to put Palestinian civilians in harm's way. They fire rockets from schools, from hospitals, from mosques. They even shoot their own people when they try to leave the war zone. A senior Hamas official, Fatri Hamad, boasted, listen to this, he boasted that Palestinian women and children excel at being human shields. His words, excel at being human shields. What monstrous evil. For Israel, every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. They actually want Palestinian civilians to die so that Israel will be smeared in the international media and be pressured to end the war before it's won. This would enable Hamas to survive another day and, as they vowed, to carry out October 7th again and again and again. Well, I want to assure you, no matter what pressure is brought to bear, I will never allow that to happen. vast majority of Americans have not fallen for this Hamas propaganda. They continue to support Israel. And I want to say thank you, America, and thank you, senators and House members who continue to support us, continue to support Israel, continue to support the truth and see through the lies. But as for the minority that may have fallen for Hamas's cons job, I suggest you listen to Colonel John Spencer. John Spencer is head of urban warfare studies at West Point. He studied every major urban conflict. I was going to say in modern history. He corrected me, no, in history. Israel, he said, has implemented more precautions to prevent civilian harm than any military in history and beyond what international law requires. That's why, despite all the lies you've heard, the war in Gaza has one of the lowest ratios of combatants to non-combatants casualties in the history of urban warfare. And you want to know where it's lowest in Gaza? It's lowest in Rafah. In Rafah. Remember what so many people said? If Israel goes into Rafah, there'll be thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of civilians killed. Well, last week, I went into Rafah. I visited our troops as they finished fighting Hamas's remaining terrorist battalions. I asked the commander there, how many terrorists did you take out in Rafah? He gave me an exact number, 1,203. I asked him, how many civilians were killed? He said, Prime Minister, practically none, with the exception of a single incident where shrapnel from a bomb hit a Hamas weapons depot and unintentionally killed 24 people. The answer is practically none. You want to know why? Because Israel got the civilians out of harm's way, something people said we could never do, but we did it. These heroes here today, the heroic soldiers of Israel, should not be condemned for how they're conducting the war in Gaza. They should be commended for it. I want to thank all of you here today who forcefully opposed the false accusations of the ICC and stood up for the truth. These lies are not only libelous, they're downright dangerous. The ICC is trying to shackle Israel's hands and prevent us from defending ourselves. And if Israel's hands are tied, America is next. And I'll tell you what else is next. The ability of all democracies to fight terrorism will be imperiled. That's what's on the line. So let me assure you, the hands of the Jewish state will never be shackled. Israel will always defend itself. My friends, in the Middle East, Iran is virtually behind all the terrorism, all the turmoil, all the chaos, all the killing. And that should come as no surprise. When he founded the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini pledged, "We will export our revolution to the entire world." We will export the Islamic revolution to the entire world. Now ask yourself, which country ultimately stands in the way of Iran's maniacal plans to impose radical Islam on the world? And the answer is clear. It's America, the guardian of Western civilization and the world's greatest power. That's why Iran sees America as its greatest enemy. Last month, we heard a revealing comment, ostensibly about the war in Gaza, but about something else. It came from the foreign minister of Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, and he said this: "This is not a war with Israel. Israel," he said, "is merely a tool. The main war, the real war, is with America." Iran's regime has been fighting America from the moment it came to power. In 1979, it stormed the American embassy. It held scores of Americans hostage for 444 days. Since then, Iran's terrorist proxies have targeted America in the Middle East and beyond. In Beirut, they killed 241 US servicemen. In Africa, they bombed American embassies. In Iraq, they supplied explosives to maim and kill thousands of American soldiers. In America, they actually sent death squads. They sent death squads here to murder a former Secretary of State and a former National Security Advisor. And as we recently learned, they even brazenly threatened to assassinate President Trump. But Iran understands that to truly challenge America, it must first conquer the Middle East. And for this, it uses its many proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Yet in the heart of the Middle East, standing in Iran's way, is one proud pro-American democracy, my country, the State of Israel. That's why the mobs in Tehran chant death to Israel before they chant death to America. For Iran, Israel is first, America is next. So when Israel fights Hamas, we're fighting Iran. When we fight Hezbollah, we're fighting Iran. When we fight the Houthis, we're fighting Iran. And when we fight Iran, we're fighting the most radical and murderous enemy of the United States of America. And one more thing. When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that could destroy Israel and threaten every American city, every city that you come from, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you. My friends, if you remember one thing from the speech, remember this: our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight, and our victory will be your victory. Ladies and gentlemen, that victory is in sight. Israel's defeat of Hamas will be a powerful blow to Iran's axis of terror. Another part of that axis, Hezbollah, attacked Israel on October 8th, a day after the Hamas attack. It has launched thousands of missiles and drones against us. 80,000 of our citizens in northern Israel evacuated their homes, becoming effectively refugees in their own land. We are committed to returning them home. We prefer to achieve this diplomatically. But let me be clear. Israel will do whatever it must do to restore security to our northern border and return our people safely to their homes. Last Friday, a third Iranian proxy, the Houthis, attacked Tel Aviv with a deadly drone. It exploded a few hundred feet from the American consulate, killing 1 person and injuring 9. On Saturday, I authorized a swift response to that attack. All our enemies should know this. Those who attack Israel will pay a very heavy price. And as we defend ourselves, on all fronts, I know that America has our back. And I thank you for it. All sides of the aisle, thank you. My friends, for decades, America has provided Israel with generous military assistance, and a grateful Israel has provided America with critical intelligence that saved many lives. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth. I choose my words carefully. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth that help protect both our countries. And we also help keep American boots, we help keep Americans' boots off the ground while protecting our shared interests in the Middle East. I deeply appreciate America's support, including in this current war. But this is an exceptional moment. Fast-tracking U.S. military aid can dramatically expedite an end to the war in Gaza and help prevent a broader war in the Middle East. In World War II, as Britain fought on the front lines of civilization, Winston Churchill appealed to Americans with these famous words: "Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." Today, as Israel fights on the front line of civilization, I too appeal to America. Give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster. My dear friends, the war in Gaza could end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders, disarms, and returns all the hostages. But if they don't, Israel will fight until we destroy Hamas's military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and bring all our hostages home. That's what total victory means, and we will settle for nothing less. The day after we defeat Hamas, a new Gaza can emerge. My vision for that day is of a demilitarized and de-radicalized Gaza. Israel does not seek to resettle Gaza, but for the foreseeable future, we must retain overriding security control there to prevent the resurgence of terror, to ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. Gaza should have a civilian administration run by Palestinians who do not seek to destroy Israel. That's not too much to ask. It's a fundamental thing that we have a right to demand and to receive. A new generation of Palestinians must no longer be taught to hate Jews, but rather to live in peace with us. Those twin words, demilitarization and de-radicalization, those II concepts were applied to Germany and Japan after World War II, and that led to decades of peace, prosperity, and security. Following our victory, with the help of regional partners, the demilitarization and de-radicalization of Gaza can also lead to a future of security, prosperity, and peace. That's my vision for Gaza. Now here's my vision for the broader Middle East. It's also shaped in part by what we saw in the aftermath of World War II. After that war, America forged a security alliance in Europe to counter the growing Soviet threat. Likewise, America and Israel today can forge a security alliance in the Middle East to counter the growing Iranian threat. All countries that are at peace with Israel and all those countries who will make peace with Israel should be invited to join this alliance. We saw a glimpse of that potential alliance on April 14th. Led by the United States, more than half a dozen nations worked alongside Israel to help neutralize hundreds of missiles and drones launched by Iran against us. Thank you, President Biden, for bringing that coalition together. The new alliance I envision would be a natural extension of the groundbreaking Abraham Accords. Those accords saw peace forged between Israel and 4 Arab countries, and they were supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. We could call, I have a name for this new alliance. I think we should call it the Abraham Alliance. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering the historic Abraham Accords. Like Americans, Israelis were relieved that President Trump emerged safe and sound from that dastardly attack on him, dastardly attack on American democracy. There is no room for political violence in democracies. I also want to thank President Trump for all the things he did for Israel, from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, to confronting Iran's aggression, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there. That's Jerusalem, our eternal capital, never to be divided again. My dear friends, Democrats and Republicans, despite these times of upheaval, I'm hopeful about the future. I'm hopeful about Israel because my people, the Jewish people, emerged from the depths of hell, from dispossession and genocide. And against all odds, we restored our sovereignty in our ancient homeland. We built a powerful and vibrant democracy, a democracy that pushes the boundaries of innovation for the betterment of all humanity. I'm hopeful about America because I'm hopeful about Americans. I know how much the people of this country have sacrificed to defend freedom. America will continue to be a force for light and good in a dark and dangerous world. For free peoples everywhere, America remains the beacon of liberty its extraordinary founders envisioned back in 1776. Working together, I'm confident that our two nations will vanquish the tyrants and terrorists who threaten us both. As Israel's Prime Minister, I promise you this: no matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult the road ahead, Israel will not relent. Israel will not bend. We will defend our land. We will defend our people. We will fight until we achieve victory. Victory over liberty, rather victory of liberty over tyranny, victory of life over death, victory of good over evil. That's our solemn commitment. And we will continue to work with the United States and our Arab partners to transform a troubled region from a backwater of repression, poverty, and war into a thriving oasis of dignity, prosperity, and peace. In this noble mission, as in many others, Israel will always remain America's indispensable ally. Through thick and thin, in good times and in bad, Israel will always be your loyal friend and your steadfast partner. On behalf of the people of Israel, I came here today to say thank you, America. Thank you for your support and solidarity. Thank you for standing in Israel, with Israel, in our hour of need. Together we shall defend our common civilization. Together we shall secure a brilliant future for both our nations. May God bless Israel, may God bless America, and may God bless the great alliance between Israel and America forever. When the blood libels against the Jewish state come from people who wear fancy silk robes and speak.
You know, that's Rashida Tlaib. And basically, it looks like she's at a Sotheby's auction bidding on a Hamas Gaza tunnel.
In lofty tones about law and justice. Here's a case in point. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has shamefully accused Israel of deliberately starving the people in God's green.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. So the top of the news today, a stirring, forceful, tough, and bipartisan speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in front of a joint session of Congress. In just a moment, we'll be joined by House Speaker Mike Johnson to talk about Mr. Netanyahu's very brilliant speech and some other things. But first up, I want to just play some clips from the speech itself. And I begin with a Reagan-esque declaration from...
And the reason I'm doing this for 4 minutes is obviously you just heard the speech, but I want you to see how it was received, an example of how it was received by positive-oriented people.
The Prime Minister. Take a listen.
Because I was watching it just out of curiosity for a little while on CNN, And it was like a tale of two cities. It was a tale of two speeches. For me, the bottom line is what I heard and saw with my own eyes and ears. But I want to share with you just an example of one kind of response from someone who was open-minded.
For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose.
I love that. We win, they lose. That was one of Reagan's favorite lines about the old communist Soviet Union. Anyway, throughout the speech, the Israeli prime minister took great care to conjoin Israel and the United States. Here's some of it.
Our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight. And our victory will be your victory.
There you go. And he also took great care to make his appeal a bipartisan one. First to President Biden. Take a listen to this.
I want to thank President Biden for his tireless efforts on behalf of the hostages and for his efforts to the hostage families as well. He rightly called Hamas sheer evil.
And then a nod to former President Trump. Here it goes.
I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering the historic Abraham Accords, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there.
But, Mr. Netanyahu spared no scorn for pro-Hamas protesters when he launched this one. Take a listen.
Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
Yes, useful idiots. He also rebutted charges that Israeli troops were using excessive force among civilians in Gaza. Plus, he cited impressive numbers, rebutting another criticism that Israel is somehow starving Gaza. Take a listen to this.
Israel has enabled more than 40,000 aid trucks to enter Gaza. That's 500,000 tons of food. And that's more than 3,000 calories for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. If there are Palestinians in Gaza who aren't getting enough food, it's not because Israel is blocking it, it's because Hamas is stealing it.
Of course they are. But then the prime minister defended the Israeli army, the defense forces, calling the soldiers unbowed, undaunted, unafraid, and referred to them biblically as the lions of Israel. And he made it very clear that Israel intends to complete its destruction of Hamas and continue the fight. And that fight includes the fight against Hezbollah, the fight against Houthis, and most importantly, the fight against the terrorist banker and puppeteer Iran. Then Mr. Netanyahu concluded with this thought.
May God bless Israel, may God bless America, and may God bless the great alliance between Israel and America forever.
All right, and I will conclude with this thought. Bibi Netanyahu was at the top of his game today in his congressional address, and I think he did himself and the cause of Israel a lot of good. President Biden has too often been too ambiguous about supporting our #1 Middle East ally. And the Democrats' new standard-bearer Kamala Harris has too often criticized Israel in public and even in worse terms in private. Israel's natural political ally is Donald Trump, who will meet with Netanyahu in Mar-a-Lago on Friday. But the prime minister was wise to make today's speech a bipartisan one. The Israeli cause is just. Its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu showed a ton of energy in defending that cause today, and I thought it was just what the doctor ordered. All right, my take.
Speech was remarkable. As I told Prime Minister Netanyahu afterwards, it was Churchillian, and that is an adjective I have not used for any other world leader.
The Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
As you know, there are 4 channels of news in Israel. There's Channel 11, which is like public broadcasting, very left-wing. Channel 12 and 13, which are even more left-wing, they're like MSNBC. And Channel 14, which is like Fox. Whenever I could find something nice on Channel 11, 12, or 13, I try to share it with you. Here's Channel 14 telling people in Israel, here's what happened today. It's only about 2 minutes I'm going to show you. And their main point is Shalal Arutzei Achadashot Hamovilim Ba'artzot Abrit Uva'olam Shidru et Ne'um Netanyahu B'Congress. That it's a quick idea showing Israelis that not only was America live showing this stream, live streaming it, it was live streamed on every station in America, all the networks, as well as cable. It was a live stream, but it was also in most parts of the world.
כך התקבל אמש ראש הממשלה נתניהו בקונגרס האמריקני.
This is how Netanyahu was received in the American Congress.
תשואות רבות ומחוות קימה, עשרות רבות של פעמים. המנהיג היחיד והראשון בהיסטוריה שזוכה לכבוד ולמעמד המיוחד הזה.
He's the first leader in history that has the honor of having been 4 times in Congress.
Members of the House of Representatives and the Senate have now risen to their feet and are applauding as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu starts making his way.
ב-CNN, בפוקס ניוז, ב-ABC, ב-CBS, מהדורות החדשות המובילות והנצפות בארצות הברית. שידרו את הנאום כולו בשידור ישיר.
All the leading stations in America showed it live.
You had a split screen, and you looked at the directness, the toughness, and also the thoughtfulness of Netanyahu.
Right.
And then you looked at the vapidity and the lack of energy of Biden. It's just unbelievable, the gap in the two.
מתברר כי הנאום שקודם לכן תואר ככזה שלא יתפוס את הקשב בארצות הברית בגלל פרישת ביידן, תפס גם תפס. אבל לא רק בארצות הברית.
Not only was it in the United States that it was shown live,
בעולם כולו.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's 4th address to a joint session of Congress. That is more than any other world leader in history, including Winston Churchill.
כך נראו מסקי הטלוויזיה ברשתות המובילות בעולם. בבריטניה, צרפת, גרמניה, אל-ג'זירה ואפילו באיראן.
Britain, France, Germany,
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin
Arab countries.
Netanyahu has addressed the U.S. Congress.
Le Congrès des États-Unis, debout comme un seul homme pour applaudir le Premier ministre israélien.
וכך נראו הבוקר שערי העיתונים הנחשבים.
All the major newspapers in the United States.
נאומו של נתניהו סחף ועידד, והופיע בהבלטה רבה. נאומו ההיסטורי של ראש הממשלה נתניהו זכה לתשואות רמות גם כאן בבית.
This speech, this historic speech by Ben Netanyahu also gained applause here at home, namely Israel.
מליאת הכנסת בין הצבעה להצבעה. צפו חברי הכנסת בניידים והתמוגגו.
In the Knesset, where the Knesset members were sitting doing their Knesset business, everybody had a live feed of the speech that they were watching amid the debating and voting on things. And every time there was a applause line in Congress in America, members of the Knesset in the Knesset chamber started applauding likewise.
אנחנו עכשיו כאן בלילה של הצבעות, אנחנו מדברים לראות בין ההצבעות את נאומו של ראש הממשלה. עכשיו כל אחד ראש הממשלה, אתה מייצג אותנו בכבוד.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. You're representing all of us. We love you and we're counting on you.
ובפוליטיקה הישראלית הצינית, ראשון המברכים היה, איך לא, השר לביטחון לאומי איתמר בן גביר שצייץ.
Some of Netanyahu's critics on the right today, after that speech, they praised him.
ישראל אוהבת את נתניהו.
He tweeted, Israel loves Netanyahu.
פרפרזה לציוץ אחר שלו, שעורר סערה, שבו גינה את הנשיא האמריקאי.
He caused concern when he had tweeted, Biden loves Hamas. Hamas loves Biden.
אפילו יושב ראש המחנה הממלכתי בני גנץ, שרק...
One of the, probably the main political opponent in terms of running for prime minister is Benny Gantz. And he is classy enough that he congratulated Netanyahu on the speech. On the other hand, there's a guy who's the head of the opposition, Yair Lapid, and he used the opportunity to criticize Netanyahu as the worst speech ever.
בצהריים תקף את נתניהו וטען כי הוא מסכל עסקת חטופים, גילה ממלכתיות.
They're reading the tweet from Gantz, the classy guy that would challenge him for prime minister, saying, when it comes to outside of the land, b'chutz la'aretz, in the outside of Israel, there's no such thing as an Israeli, as the coalition or the opposition. We are all the state of Israel. And today, the prime minister represented us in a clear way that was well set forth and sharp and put forth the righteous cause of Israel. And our brave soldiers.
בין קואליציה ואופוזיציה כתב, כולנו מדינת ישראל, ראש הממשלה נתניהו הציג היום באופן בהיר מוערך וחד את עמדתה הצודקת של מדינת ישראל ואת הגיבורים שלנו.
יש לי שאלה אחת בעקבות נאום
On the other hand, this is the lowlife who heads the opposition, Yair Lapid, and he responded to the speech. I have one question in the aftermath of that speech.
נתניהו. מה?
What's going to be with the hostages? Because it's the only thing they have really to criticize him on. There are hostages out. Why are you talking about Hamas? Why are you talking about the American-Israel alliance? Why are you asking that weapons be sent more quickly, et cetera, et cetera? Why didn't you simply make a speech about the hostages? By the way, this is why he's polling now at 12 or 13 seats out of 120. He polls at about 10%. So it's because he's a hateful guy.
מה אמרת על זה מלבד מילים ריקות?
What did you say except for empty words?
היה חייב לגלות מרירות וטעם חמצמץ, היה כמובן ראש האופוזיציה יאיר לפיד, שכינה את הנאום חרפה.
Lapid coined, when he was asked about the speech, he called it a cherpa. A cherpa is like a disgrace. He called this, that's how politics works, right? Your opponent. So Gantz showed class and said, what can I do? I'm against this guy, but it was a pretty good speech. And Lapid called the speech a disgrace. The ceremonial president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, also tweeted, I bless this important speech by the Prime Minister in the presence of the joint session of the American Congress. We're calling for the immediate and the urgently immediate release and return of the hostages. It has to be in the heart of our daily agenda.
על נאום חשוב של ראש הממשלה נתניהו בפני מושב משותף של הקונגרס האמריקאי.
פרסמו פעם סקר בארצות הברית, 10 האנשים המשפיעים בדעת הקהל האמריקאית. היו שם 2 אנשים שהם לא אזרחים אמריקאים, האפיפיור ובנימין נתניהו. כשראש ממשלה...
So what we're going to do is, you get the idea of the coverage in Israel. Let's go on to the next item.
שאלתי אותו כמה מזוודות, כי מה שעניין בעיקר...
Now this is the news anchor on Channel 14. They have co-anchors. This guy's name is Sharon. That's his first name. And they've got Maggie Tabibi is his co-anchor. She's a younger lady. And he's reporting on Channel 14 that while our channel was focusing on the urgently important speech by Netanyahu and how much we're counting on him to put our best foot forward and represent us as we know he does, look at what some of the other channels were doing. And he gives one example of one of the channels that always criticizes the heck out of Netanyahu no matter what he does. And on Channel 13, like an MSNBC, while everyone else was praising him and go get him, Bibi, and have a great speech, and we're with you, Channel 13 was focused on how many pieces of luggage the Netanyahus brought with them on their flight to America.
החלקים בתקשורת הישראלית, זה לא מה יהיה בנאום, או מה יהיה בפגישות החשובות.
No, the other stations in Israel, they weren't concerned about what's going to be in the speech or what the highest priorities are.
הנה שימו לב.
כולם עלו על המטוס כנף ציון.
This is Channel 14 showing video from Channel 13 and the reporter, and he says, and then Netanyahu showed up at the airport. And now, ladies and gentlemen, look what happened.
אז מגיע, הנה תראו, כמה זאת? בסך הכל...
How many suitcases? Do you see this? Altogether, count them.
תספרו פה, תהיו ערניים, יש פה 9 מזוודות.
Counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's one suitcase, 2. Look at all the suitcases that Netanyahu's bringing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
5, 6, תספסתם 7, 8, 9, אתם רואים? והמקור שהעביר לי את הסרטון הזה, טען שהמזוודות האלה שייכות אך ורק לבני הזוג.
And those 9 suitcases only are holding only the Netanyahu family's possessions. And that's how the Israeli left. If you think they've got bad leftist media in America, here he's going on Air Force One. It's called something like the Wings of Zion is what they call their presidential or prime ministerial plane. And that's what he's reporting. That's what they're worried about.
נתניהו?
כן, יש לזה מקור והוא עומד בתוקף על כך שהמזוודות נועדו אך ורק לנתניהו.
Then they have a panel discussion. Basically, what's going on is basically is the news done? It's got nothing to do with the speech or the meetings. All Channel 13 wants is to count the suitcases. Okay, we continue. Meanwhile, Netanyahu, while he was there, went and visited Joe Biden.
Ready, 2, ready, doors, ready, pop, ready, open. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome back to the White House. Good to see you again. Yeah. It's a good shot. It's a good thing. It's a good shot. Ready.
I guess you sign in a guest book that becomes part of the National Archives decades and centuries later. And now we know that, if we didn't know it already, that he's a lefty. But he shakes with the right hand. There's no sound on this. It's not a problem on your audio. It's just a video feed showing Netanyahu meeting with Biden.
Well, welcome back, Prime Minister. We got a lot to talk about. I think we should get to it. The floor is yours.
Mr. President, we've known each other for 40 years, and you've known every Israeli Prime Minister for 50 years, from Golda Meir. So from a proud Jewish Zionist to a proud Irish-American Zionist, I want to thank you for 50 years of public service and 50 years of support for the state of Israel. I look forward to discussing with you today and working with you in the months ahead on the great issues before us.
I look forward to it as well. By the way, that first meeting with Prime Minister Golda Meir, and she had an assistant sitting next to me, a guy named Rabin. That's how far back it goes. I was only 12 then. Anyway, thank you all for being here.
You talk about the
Israel became a near impossible political problem for Joe Biden.
And then Kamala Harris, who is pretty much the presumptive Democrat presidential nominee, added her thoughts.
Kamala Harris will not find it any easier. Today, she met Benjamin Netanyahu.
Prime Minister, and I look forward to our conversation. We have a lot to talk about. Israel has a right to defend itself. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent. Thanks to the leadership of our President Joe Biden, there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. The first phase of the deal would bring about a full ceasefire, including a withdrawal of the Israeli military from population centers in Gaza. In the second phase, the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza entirely, and it would lead to a permanent end to the hostilities. There has been hopeful movement in the talks to secure an agreement on this deal. And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done.
On Wednesday, she missed his address to the US Congress, not a way to treat an ally, remarked an Israeli official.
Is in upheaval.
But for those who had grown tired of Mr. Biden's stance on Israel, it has raised some hope. Even before Mr. Biden stepped down from the presidential race, we saw a small split.
As Israel defends itself, it matters how. The United States is unequivocal. International humanitarian law must be respected. Too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Frankly, the scale of civilian suffering and the images and videos coming from Gaza are devastating.
Ms. Harris appeared to be more willing to criticise Israel for its response to the October 7th attack. According to Politico, she's privately said that the White House should take a stronger stance with Mr. Netanyahu. In March, Ms. Harris called for an immediate temporary ceasefire, describing the conflict as a human catastrophe.
Of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table. This will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in.
It was reported officials even had to tone down parts of her speech. The remarks she delivered included stating people in Gaza are starving and calling on Israel to do more to ensure the delivery of aid. The officials who quit the Biden administration to protest against the White House response to the war in Gaza are said to be positive about the VP. They are said to be cautiously optimistic that Ms. Harris would be willing to consider policy changes to protect Palestinians. Josh Paul, a former State Department official, told Politico Ms. Harris seemed less fixed and intransigent than Mr. Biden on the issue. A new approach could help win back Democrat voters who were put off by Mr. Biden's response to the war in Gaza, and Ms. Harris is a supporter of the two-state solution. She needs to keep both groups on side, though, and walking that tightrope will be one of the trickiest acts as we move towards the election.
God forbid she gets elected. God forbid.
Fox is learning there is now an open federal investigation into the pro-Hamas protests at Union Station this week, and some of the protesters are facing federal charges. Congressional correspondent Aisha Hasni is live in Washington with that. Good afternoon, Aisha.
Brad, good to see you. This is a huge development, especially after the outcry we saw on Capitol Hill, especially from Republicans. The U.S. Attorney's Office here in D.C. is the federal agency that's going after these people. They're charging 8 different protesters out of the 23 who were arrested just a block away from where I'm standing on Wednesday at the D.C. train station, Union Station. Now, 3 protesters are being charged with carrying a dangerous weapon, 1 person with assaulting a police officer, 3 more people with attempted theft, and 1 other person with making threats. And with any federal investigation, you know, Brett, more arrests could be coming. At the same time, we've also learned that 11 protesters have had their D.C. charges dropped. Again, D.C. charges are for lower crimes, misdemeanors. They were for crossing the police line, 5 for inciting violence, 3 for causing unreasonable fear. Now, all of this is coming after bipartisan condemnation from Capitol Hill over these protests, but differing opinions really about what should happen to these protesters, at least when it came to burning the American flag. Republicans wanted the DOJ to step in, while Democrats that I was talking to, at least some of them, they said they didn't like what they saw out there, but were defending free speech.
In this country, we have a
We're hearing about an act of heroism involving that chaos on Capitol Hill as pro-Palestinian demonstrators protested the Israeli prime minister speaking before a joint meeting of Congress. When they started burning the American flag, one man had seen enough. Allison Hall tells us how he tried to save Old Glory.
An American flag has been set aflame until this hero steps in. He bravely grabs the flag out of the fire and then flees into the crowd of anti-Israel protesters outside Washington's Union Station. Look, they immediately go after him. The man finally flees to safety. All that's left is a small piece of the charred flag in his hand. He tries to catch his breath.
They ripped the rest of it out of my hand, man. I'm ashamed.
I saw it. I got the whole thing.
Well, I'm ashamed I didn't stop and go back and get the rest of it.
Well, I don't think you would have lasted very long in there.
So who was the proud patriot? He's asking to remain anonymous for fears of his personal safety. We do know he's a lawyer. He agreed to talk to a reporter, but insisted his face be scribbled out in black.
That was not an attorney thing that you did right there. That was something that I think a lot of Americans will appreciate.
We spoke to Richie McGinnis, who shot the harrowing video.
He scooped up the flag and sprinted out of there, and I was, number one, amazed with his breakaway speed, and number two, amazed that he was able to make it out of there.
Yesterday's flag burning incident is sparking a wave of anger across America.
The burning of the American flag, things like that, have no place in a peaceful demonstrations.
If they come to Texas and try to do the same thing, we will throw their butts in jail.
When the day of rage ended, the American flag was hoisted once again at Union Station. Woo-hoo!
Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjacking old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool, act a fool if you like, cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough, well try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long for you to find out. I recommend you don't try that in a small
town. We're just about done now. And I want to say something about this last thing before we do the prayer for the state of Israel. We're in the 3 weeks, Bein HaMetzarim. Shiva Asar B'Tamuz was this past week, and we've talked about it in our Tuesday night class, our Thursday night class. Shiva Asar B'Tamuz was a fast day. We were fasting. That's the day that the Romans pierced the walls of Jerusalem and began a 3-week assault that culminated in burning the Beit HaMikdash on Tisha B'Av in the year 70. It's also the same idea that that's when the Babylonians broke through the wall of Jerusalem. Technically, that was on the 9th of Tamuz, and we talked about that on Tuesday and Thursday. And then for 3 weeks, the Babylonians marched through and burned the first Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. So it was Shiva Asar B'Tamuz last Tuesday. That's why we did not have Navi class, because we would be in the last hour of a day-long fast and not a good time to sit and listen. I don't know what TV news you watch. If you're an American, if you watch channel, if it's channel 2, I think it's Nora O'Donnell. Channel 4 is Lester Holt. I don't know who does channel 7, Stephanopoulos. If you watch MSNBC, I guess Rachel Maddow. Fox News, I guess Brett Baer or one of those guys. CNN, Jake Tapper. I've been watching news all my life, and with God's kindness, I'm over 70 now. Israel has 4 TV news programs. Channel 11, 12, 13 we talked about, and Channel 14. And what happened on the news last Tuesday, I never saw anything like it. Never saw anything like this. This is Maggie Tabibi, and she's one of the 2 the co-anchors. Earlier we met the other one, and she's the other co-anchor. It says Tzet Tzom Yud Zayin B'Tamuz. This is the nightly news on Tuesday, as the 17th of Tammuz is coming to an end. Moridim et hachomot, because of the tension among the Israelis with each other over politics and stuff. It's a call by the anchor to kind of cool down the tensions. Let's take down the walls that separate us. Let's see what happens over the next 45 seconds.
מצרים, תקופה של 3 שבועות עד 9 באב.
Let's get that up there. The 17th of Tamuz represents the beginning of the period of Bein HaMetzarim, the tragedies, the period of 3 weeks that lead up to Tisha B'Av.
המסמלת את הזמן שבין הבקעת חומות ירושלים והמצור על העיר שהגיע לסופו.
It's the period between the breaking and piercing of the walls of Yerushalayim and the siege and everything that ultimately came to destroy the Beit HaMikdash.
שבועות ספורים לפני חורבן בית שני. אלה תמונות בשידור ישיר מהכותל.
These films that we're showing here on Channel 14 as I speak is live from the Kotel, where people are gathered for the Ma'ariv, I guess the final prayer as the 17th of Tammuz comes to an end.
שם ציינו מתפללים רבים את היום המיוחד הזה.
And so there's a pretty huge audience or a crowd of congregation of people assembled for the purpose of praying on this very special day.
זוהי ההזדמנות להזכיר שעל רקע הקרע החברתי והחורבן הלאומי שפקד את כולנו מאז 7 באוקטובר.
And she's talking about how there's been this terrible split in our country, politics and everything like that. And then of course there was October 7th.
באחדותנו, אולי זה הזמן.
And since October 7th, we look for our strength. Our strength is in national unity. And maybe she says today, the 17th of Tammuz is a day to think about being stronger in national unity. Again, she's the Nora O'Donnell, Lester Holt, Jake Tapper, Rachel Maddow, Brett Baer of Israeli Channel 14. She's their news anchor. And since it's Israel, you would expect maybe that the more traditional TV station would take note that it's the 17th of Tammuz, where the other stations wouldn't. They'd be counting suitcases. But then there's this.
להוריד את החומות היום יותר מתמיד.
So may it be that we all can somehow take down those walls that divide us now more than ever.
לטובת הצופים שסיימו את הצום, אשמח.
And out of respect and honor for those of our viewers who now are finishing their fast, I would love to be part of your breaking the fast.
להתיר את הצום האישי שלי יחד איתכם.
Because I've been fasting too all day.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהכל נהיה בדברו.
Amen. This to me is absolutely means Mashiach is coming soon. And I'm not Chabad, but Mashiach is coming sooner than I could ever have imagined. That is just, I can't begin to tell you how unbelievable it is that the TV anchor would do that. Just one more second, and then we'll close with the prayer for the army.
יחד איתכם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהכל נהיה בדברו.
אמן.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל, הוא יברך
our brave brothers and sisters risking their lives to protect our people. Welcome them under the shelter of your holy embrace. May God be with us at times of war as in times of peace. Soften the hearts of our enemies and guide us all on a path to peace, so that one day we may realize the prophetic promise when nation will no longer fight against nation and prepare for war no more.
I want to thank everybody for being here with us today. I hope that this was meaningful and inspirational for you, as it actually was for me. And have a wonderful week, which is a paradox because we are in Bein HaMetzarim, the period of sorrow, but we're allowed to enjoy our lives. And the best way to enjoy our lives is by serving God, doing mitzvot, and thanking God for every day of our lives. We'll see you Tuesday night, God willing, for Navi class. Bye-bye, everybody.